Hi everyone, welcome back to another video in the Web Security Academy series. In today's video, we'll be covering lab number 4 in the XXE injection module titled Blind XXE Without a Banned Interaction via XML Parameter Entities. If you do not have an account on the Web Security Academy, you can get one by visiting the URL portswigger.net/websecurity and clicking on the sign up button. I already have an account and I am logged in, so to access the exercise, I'm going to click on Academy. Select all labs, do a search on XXE injection, and select lab number 4 titled Blind XXE Without a Banned Interaction via XML Parameter Entities. Alright, let's get started. This lab has a check stock feature that parses XML input but does not display any unexpected values and blocks requests containing regular external entities. To solve the lab, use a parameter entity to make the XML parser issue a DNS lookup and HTTP request to Burp Collaborator. Alright, so the target goal over here is to exploit an XXE injection in order to perform a DNS lookup or an HTTP request to an attacker-controlled server. Now the issue over here is that the application blocks requests containing regular external entities, and so we'll need to use a different type of entity in order to be able to exploit this vulnerability. We do have a note here that says to prevent the Academy platform from being used to attack third parties, our firewall blocks interactions between the labs and arbitrary external systems. To solve the lab, you must use Burp Collaborator's default public server. Alright. So because the Academy has firewall rules that blocks interactions with random attacker servers, we'll be forced to use the professional version of Burp. Alright, let's access the lab. Now notice over here, this is the built-in browser in Burp, and so all my requests are already being passed in my Burp proxy. Okay, the first thing is to map the application and try to find an endpoint that talks to the backend that potentially accepts and parses XML input. So let's click on View Details over here. Go down, you could see over here there's a check stock feature that definitely talks to the backend. Let's click on it and send this request to Repeater. Now in Repeater over here, let's make this a little bit bigger. You could see it's a post request to the /product/stock endpoint. And if we go down over here, it takes in XML input and we have full control over this XML script over here. So because you do see XML input, you definitely need to test for XXE injection. And what we'll do first is try a general entity and see if it'll accept it. So as usual, we define a DTD, so doc type. This could be called anything, we'll just say test. And then we'll define an external entity. So entity, let's call it XXE. It's external, so we'll use the keyword system. And then what we're going to do over here is try to ping our attacker-controlled server. So we'll go to Burp and then go to Burp Collaborator Client. And let's put that right over here. And then click on Copy to Clipboard to copy the URL of our client. So we'll put over here HTTP, and then we'll paste our Burp Collaborator URL, and then we'll just close it off. Okay, this looks good. So we're defining our external entity right over here. Now we need to call it somewhere in the script, so we'll call it right over here. And we'll hit send. Now notice over here, you see that you get an error saying that entities are not allowed for security reasons. And if we click on poll now, we don't get an HTTP ping or a DNS ping. So the application, just like the exercise said, has some kind of mechanism in the backend that blocks regular entities. So what we're going to do is we're going to try something called parameter entities. It's very similar to a general entity with the exception that it can only be referenced within the document type definition. And so if there's something in the application that is blocking us from referencing a regular entity from over here, this won't be an issue with an external entity because an external entity gets referenced right in the document type definition. So let's hit send over here. So you could see over here the application's functions as it is because it's not really processing this entity. Now, to convert this to a parameter entity, there's just a few differences. The first one is the declaration of an XML parameter entity includes the percent character before the entity name. And so over here, you have to put percent. And then the next thing is that parameter entities are referenced using the percent character instead of the usual ampersand. So remember when I said that parameter entities don't need referencing within the document, you can only reference it within the DTD. And so you would reference it right over here, and you don't use the ampersand sign, you use the percent sign, and then the rest is all the same. And that's essentially it. That's how an external parameter entity works. I'm not sure if we have an extra space over here, or we do not. All right, we just need to make this bigger. All right, this looks good. Let's hit send. You could see over here we get an XML parsing error, but we don't get the custom error that says you're not allowed to use entities in the application, which is a good sign. And we immediately got a ping back, both a DNS request and an HTTP request from the server that is running the application. And that's essentially it. We successfully completed the exercise by exploiting the vulnerability using Burp Collaborator Client. We usually script the exploit, but because the application blocks any requests that are from any server other than Burp's collaborator, we won't be able to script this exploit. In the next couple of labs, we'll look at how to exfiltrate data from a blind XXE injection.